All right, so we are writing out an introduction for our essays, and this can be a really intimidating part of writing. It is very important. It sets the tone for our writing, and it pulls our readers in, gets them engaged, makes sure that they understand what this essay is going to be about. So this is an important part of our essay, but also we're not really introducing stuff that's, vital and important. That's our body paragraphs. Our body paragraphs really dig into what we're trying to prove throughout our essay. The intro is just kind of easing into it. So there are three parts of any really good intro. We've got the hook, the bridge, and the thesis. I actually like to begin, I go in a weird order, and it kind of helps me though, so I'll write it down for you. I start with the thesis, then I write my hook, and then I finish with the bridge. So ultimately, when we see the paragraph written out, it needs to go hook, bridge, thesis in that order, but I don't necessarily write it in that order. And here's the reason why. Our thesis starts by looking at the prompt, and I think that's an easier way to get started, okay? So we're going to begin going through that process by looking at an example. If we take a look down here in red, our example prompt is, how does the setting of the story impact the mood? Okay? Let's make up a story title for this one. We're going to call it The Monster by Samson Greensmith. I'm making all this up. There we go. So that's going to be our story. How does the setting of the story impact the mood? So in the thesis, it's really simple because I start by stealing some words. So I'm going to say the setting of the story impacts the mood. So I'm just stealing all these words so far. But then I need to explain how. That's the tricky part. So I can't just say the setting of the story impacts the mood. They're asking me, how does it do that? So maybe I want to say the setting of the story impacts the mood by frightening the readers. So now I'm giving a reason why. I'm telling us how it does that thing. Okay, so that is my answer. So I'm rephrasing the prompt by stealing some of these words, but then I'm also adding in my answer as well. So I've got the answer here that's something new that I'm adding on. So now that's where our essay is headed, is kind of proving this point and supporting this point. But we don't want to just jump into this right away, okay? We could, in an essay, we could just start with our thesis and jump right in. It's kind of boring, though, for our readers. So that's why we need to backtrack. So now that I have my thesis written, let's come up here and look at the hook. So the hook should be really engaging, pull in our readers. We want to make it about the general topic that we're dealing with in the story, not necessarily the story itself. And we want to make it something that the audience can relate to. So if we take a look back down here at our prompt, I would say we've got two general things we can look at: the setting or the mood, or maybe how they deal with each other. I think I'm going to start with just the setting, okay? So the hook, you've got a lot of different options. If we take a peek in Schoology, in our week 28 Thursday folder, there is a document here called Writing Hook Suggestions. So these are different ways that we can create a hook. Let's take a look at some of these. We can use dialogue. We can do action, like we're telling a little story. We can say something unexpected. We could provide a contrast, provide vivid descriptions. You guys have some wonderful descriptive writing. We could ask a question. It has to be an interesting question, though. Not, how do you think the mood? We don't want to just repeat the prompt's question. That's boring. We want to ask a good, interesting question. We can use humor if you're funny. I'm not always very funny, so I don't use that one very often. We could do a pause for dramatic effect, or an anecdote is like a little story. So these are some awesome suggestions here. What I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to show you what it looks like when we write a really good, interesting question, okay? So I'm not going to repeat the prompt. That's boring. But maybe I'm going to say something like, have you ever been trapped in a haunted house? Because that type of question, when you ask somebody it without even thinking about it, they answer in their head. So they're either going to say, no, of course I've never stayed in a haunted house. Or they're going to say, actually, there was this one time where I'm pretty certain. So we've pulled readers in automatically right away by asking a question like this. But if we were to go from saying, have you ever been trapped in a haunted house, to the setting of the story impacts the mood by frightening the readers, there's no real link here. There's no real connection, okay? That's what our bridge is for. The bridge is the ultimate transition. So I'm going to start it by kind of talking a little bit more about this hook. And then I'm going to introduce the title and the author of our specific story. So right now it says, have you ever been trapped in a haunted house? Now I want to say, odds are, if you had been trapped in a haunted house, you probably weren't happy about it. Sorry you have to hear all the clinking of my pen there. Okay, so let's take a look at this now. Have you ever been trapped in a haunted house? Odds are if you had been trapped in a haunted house, you probably weren't happy about it. So what I'm doing there is I'm now starting to bring in this idea of mood. I'm starting to connect now to the mood, okay? But if I go from this to all of a sudden the setting of the story impacts the mood, they don't know what I'm talking about yet. So we want to now introduce our text. What did we call it? The monster. So I can say, in the story, the monster by, and I want to give them the author if we know it. With this one we do because it's made up, by Samson Greensmith. So in the story, The Monster by Samson Greensmith, the main character stays the night in a haunted house. Now we can transition into the setting of the story impacts the mood by frightening the readers. And that makes a little bit more sense now. So that's how we can create an introduction. Bum, bum, bum. Now it's your turn. In Schoology, we have those writing hook suggestions that you can look at. I've also provided for you some sample introductions. These can be really nice, really helpful, just in kind of seeing how we can pull the readers in and introduce a general topic and then eventually transition into the more specific thesis that we have. So give those a look over, and if you have any questions about writing your introduction, reach out and let me know.